This is Michael Popok, Legal AF After Dark. This past Saturday, Ben Meiselas and me on Legal AF got to talk and debate what it means for Donald Trump's lawyers back-to-back to plead guilty in Georgia. Sidney Powell for misdemeanors, but with a cooperation obligation and truth obligation. Ken Chesebro, the architect of the fake elector scandal, who believes that Joe Biden actually won the election, and his having pled guilty to a felony but got probation, and his obligation to testify truthfully. And how many other people not only does that implicate in Georgia, and Georgia prosecution by Phony Willis, but the D.C. election case brought by Jack Smith. There's at least 4 unindicted, for now, co-conspirators whose necks are back on the chopping block based on the cooperation of Sidney Powell, true believer Sidney Powell, release the Kraken, Sidney Powell, and Ken Chesebro. We talk about it here. Take a look at Legal AF.
And this was a big shocker that Sidney Powell, someone who Donald Trump wanted to appoint as a special counsel in and around the January 6th insurrection, was going to be entering a guilty plea. We then watched as she pled to 6 separate counts. They were reduced to misdemeanors, but nonetheless serious counts. She had to accept the factual allegations against her, sentenced to 6 years probation, had to enter into a proffer session, and that began a historically important week on all fronts, because when we talk about the dominoes falling, what Fulton County District Attorney Phony Willis may be able to achieve by securing the guilty pleas of Sidney Powell, Ken Chesebro, and their trial, because they both elected to invoke the Speedy Trial Act. Heck, jury selection was taking place on Friday as Ken Chesebro pled guilty, Donald Trump's lawyer who wrote a memorandum around the January 6th insurrection. But this will have a domino effect on other Trump co-defendants, and now potentially can mean that the case against Donald Trump, the RICO case, can take place in 2024, because this trial was slated to be like 6 months at least. It could have been more than that. So Popok, can you break down for us first just like what went down with these guilty pleas, and then their broader implications and import?
Absolutely. Thank you. I would say thank you to my co-anchor. Thank you for giving me a question and let me do my podcast stuff. Yeah, this is more epic of a result than even the press on first blush could give it credit for. We're just catching up and catching our breath, but here is the ramifications of it. We now have 3 total co-conspirator defendants. Co-conspirator joined at the hip with Donald Trump, who have pled guilty, will plead guilty, and will look a jury in the eye against Donald Trump and say that they are convicted felons, and that they committed the crimes, or at least the ones they pled to. Sidney Powell, it's not just about the 6 misdemeanors and the 6 years of probation and her letter of apology to the people of the state of Georgia. It is her proffer, which is her sworn statement under oath developed with her counsel that was given as a condition of being given the plea deal. And then, more importantly, it is the future testimony she will give in Georgia, which is not limited to the 6 misdemeanors that she's pled to. That's something that's often lost in the reporting. Just because she's only pled to 6 and Ken Chesebro to 1 felony, which I'll talk about next, doesn't mean that they're limited in terms of their testimony. In fact, quite the opposite. They are required to be fulsome and complete about anything and everything that the prosecutor in Georgia has on their mind, that they want to have for the continued prosecution and cases against the others. And when I say the others, here, Donald Trump. And so who better? So that's one thing I want to make clear. And let me just combine that with Ken Chesebro, then I'll bring it all together. Ken Chesebro, who didn't want to be tried with Sidney Powell. And again, I wanted to give a bit of a credit before I get into Chesebro to Phony Willis and the mastery and the masterful prosecution and preparation that is the Fulton County District Attorney's Office that amazes me and makes me happy to be a part of a justice system every day. The reason she was able to get these plea deals is, and we gave her a lot of flack, and so I want to give her the compliment for the big gap of 7 months between indictments are imminent and the fact when she finally got the indictment. And we always said she was working. She was working in between to prepare her case for the just in case somebody like Powell and Chesebro decided to invoke their Speedy Trial Act rights and force a trial within a month of the indictment. The only way that you can get this kind of plea deal and have the leverage in your hand is if you're ready to go to trial when you tell the judge you're ready to go to trial. So far from being caught flat-footed, Chesebro and Powell were caught flat-footed because they thought speedy trial might lead to the dismissal of the case. And instead, Fani Willis said, we'll meet you there in the courthouse. What time? And then they knew, we're between a rock and not even a hard place. And we're in a vice of Fani Willis's making. And Fani Willis knows how to use that vice to get people to flip. She's done it before in large racketeering, influence, and corrupt organization act, RICO cases, and we're watching her do it now. Chesebro was one of the architects or the leading architect of the fake elector scheme and scandal to create fake electors in 7 battleground states in December of 2020 and then use them as a pressure campaign to either gum up the works or throw them at and pressure Mike Pence to not certify the election, either recognizing the fake electors for Donald Trump instead of the true electors for Joe Biden state by state, or throw it over to the states to allow the states to pick the president, which would have led to Donald Trump being selected president. He and John Eastman wrote the memos, led all of that. They were the war room operation. They weren't on the front lines, except for Eastman and Chesebro didn't appear in court, but they led the effort. They were the generals in the back, along with Donald Trump, who gave the ultimate authorities, commander-in-chief of his own usurpation campaign to cling to power, to go into those courtrooms, 60 different lawsuits, and this was all part of that conspiracy. Chesebro got the third best deal. As we said at earlier Legal AFs, depending upon when you come in and how much you make the prosecutor work and how valuable your testimony is going to be, you're going to get a great deal like probation, which we've just seen with 3 co-conspirators. But what you plead to is going to differ depending upon what the government has against you. Powell, 6 misdemeanors. Again, open season on what she testifies about. Chesebro, 1 felony count, conspiracy concerning the filing of false documents, which is the fake certificates. But again, full cooperation, full truthful testimony. Now, I know Scott Grubman, his lawyer, has already been on the news saying he's just going to tell the truth, and that's not necessarily going to implicate Donald Trump. You know, first of all, he's full of shit. He doesn't know exactly what Ken Chesebro is going to say because he doesn't know the questions that are going to be asked. And Ken Chesebro is going to pin the tail on a lot of different donkeys, as is Sidney Powell. For example, and then I want to flip over to Jack Smith. All of the people that are in the orbit of Powell and Chesebro are also unindicted currently co-conspirators in the DC case brought by Jack Smith. Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Clark, Jeffrey Clark, Boris Epstein. If you do the organization chart that, like that mob chart they use in mob conspiracy cases, for Ken Chesebro, he's going to be able to connect the dots with Mark Meadows, Boris Epstein, the inside lawyer for Donald Trump, Giuliani, Bernie Kerik, Jenna Ellis, John Eastman, Mike Roman. They're all part of the world of Ken Chesebro with Donald Trump at the center. Powell is going to be able to do Giuliani, Kerik, Jenna Ellis, John Eastman, and of course, Donald Trump. She attended one of the many crazy meetings in the White House in December of 2020 involving Mike Flynn, Rudy Giuliani, Patrick Byrne, the Overstock.com guy, to talk about the seizing of voting machines. And so just to remind people how crazy that was, Sidney Powell drafted an executive order that was never signed by Donald Trump, but was contemplated. So it's part of the conspiracy. We have it up there for Donald Trump to declare that there was definite findings of foreign interference by Iran and China through the Dominion voting systems machines and Smartmatic software. And therefore, he was authorizing the seizing by the Secretary of Defense of all voting equipment in the battleground states. That almost got executed, as did Sidney Powell herself being appointed special counsel with all the special counsel powers like Jack Smith to go after voter fraud in December of 2020. Now, so these aren't low-level people. These are high-level people, 1 degree removed from Donald Trump and connected to him in a conspiracy. Sure, they'll be cross-examined at trial of Donald Trump, and they'll try to get them on, oh, you're biased because you cut a deal. Oh, you said crazy things in the past, and now you're saying they're not true. You're a liar. Sure, but when you have 2 or 3 now co-conspirators in Georgia who are going to testify at the ultimate trial of Donald Trump, that they were a part of a conspiracy with Donald Trump, they participated in a conspiracy with Donald Trump, they admitted to the crimes related to that conspiracy, and then opened the door of all the things and connecting the dots to Donald Trump. That is what's going to happen at trial. And a trial, as you rightly noted, Ben, which could likely now happen, not in the latter part of 2024, but now the judge has a clear docket. He had 5-6 months reserved for this case. Now that's off. If I'm Fani Willis in the next couple of weeks, I say, Judge, we were going to try that case. We're not trying that case. We want to do Donald Trump in the first quarter of 2024. And we'll have to see what happens there. And then lastly, Ben, for me, the big impact here is Jack Smith. Jack Smith has a group of unindicted co-conspirators, who some of which have been indicted in Georgia, none of which have been indicted yet in the DC case. Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, Jeff Clark, Ken Chesebro, and Boris Epstein are all the not that one, are all the yes, those photos are all the unindicted co-conspirators. But if Jack Smith, based on now Powell and Chesebro, his 2 unindicted co-conspirators, don't take a plea deal with them and agree to cooperate in that case, they're going to get indicted there, and the rest are going to get indicted. I think Jack Smith, this is my view, Jack Smith has had enough of waiting around for the unindicted co-conspirators to come in and talk to him. And now we'll get another indictment, I believe, involving these people. And look out, Boris Epstein. I know he's out there trying to influence who's going to be our next Speaker of the House and saying it's got to be a MAGA Speaker of the House because Donald Trump wants it. That guy shouldn't be on the street any longer. That guy should be indicted by Jack Smith. I'm calling out Jack Smith now, based on what just happened in Georgia. Get Boris Epstein indicted and get the rest indicted or get plea deals.
See, here's where you and I will have a respectful disagreement. I don't see why Jack Smith has a need to indict any of these people, where Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis is essentially doing the work for him, doing incredible work, handing it to him on a silver platter.
There's not an overlap, though, Ben. There's a group that's not in Georgia.
It's not like the proffer agreements. Well, the evidence in Georgia through the proffer agreements that are going to be taken, that have already been taken by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, will be used by special counsel Jack Smith. And what he has to avoid, and he knows this, any opportunity that would cause a delay in that March 2024 trial date, he's not going to do. Even if you're right, Popok, and absolutely Boris Epstein deserves to be indicted, Rudy Giuliani deserves to be indicted, Sidney Powell, there are some overlaps there, right? Because a lot of the unindicted co-conspirators are people who were indicted by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis. But I hear you that there may be some unindicted co-conspirators in Fulton County that are also unindicted co-conspirators there. So I think there is overlap, but Jack Smith isn't going to, in my opinion, isn't going to do anything that causes a delay.
Let me ask you a question. I'm not talking to be clear. And let me see if this changes your mind. Doesn't have to. we like a little flash of sparks on this show. I'm not talking about a superseding indictment. I'm not talking about a superseding indictment that would add defendants to the existing case in front of Judge Chutkan, which is now simply 4 felony conspiracy counts against Donald Trump and just 1 defendant. I'm talking about a separate indictment which would go on its own track, stretched out over a year, wouldn't necessarily have to overlap with Donald Trump. Donald Trump goes first. You're right. I don't want anything to get in the way of the one case I believe would go to trial before the election, Jack Smith. I'm talking about an indictment separate and maybe assigned to Judge Chutkan, maybe not, of some of these people.
Look, if that was done after the March trial, I'm good with it. The problem is if Jack Smith tried to do that before the Trump trial in March, because the facts arise out of a common nucleus of operative facts, what Trump will immediately do and what the other co-defendants will immediately do, because they'll then go to Donald Trump, hey, have your political action committee pay for our legal fees. They will file a notice of related case. They'll file a motion to consolidate. And because it arises out of common nucleus of operative facts, there would be a good argument why that should be as part of the same indictment and consolidated. And then I think it really jeopardizes that March 2024 trial date. So I think Jack Smith's going to exercise restraint and not do it. I'm with you, though, if special counsel Jack Smith wants to do it after the March trial, the statute of limitations is still there. And frankly, it wouldn't even need to be brought by special counsel Jack Smith, because the same types of potential conflicts that created the need for a special counsel in the first place aren't there, I think, as it relates to some of the other people. And after special counsel Jack Smith concludes his prosecution. So I think that's how he's weighing it, but we'll see there. You know, I think what's interesting, if you look at as well, though, too, how Sidney Powell got the 6 misdemeanors versus Ken Chesebro getting 1 felony. And that tells me a lot also there, too. I think Sidney Powell's going to be providing a lot more cooperation, and that's where the misdemeanors come from, and allows her to make an argument to preserve her law license by saying it's not a crime of moral turpitude, but in exchange for her to just lay out everybody. Whereas I think Ken Chesebro, because his cooperation may not be as valuable, you hit him with a felony, you basically, you know, once you have that felony, it carries with it a great deal of other implications across things that you're able to do. And so I think it does also show, though, that the Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis does not expect that testimony by Chesebro to be hugely important. They just don't want to spend 6 months now with Sidney Powell out doing a trial against Ken Chesebro. They want to prepare for the Trump trial. And then it's like, when do we slot in this Trump trial? And as we talk about other cases today, I did a hot take on it that aired this morning, how what Judge Eileen Cannon is doing in causing delay in her federal case involving Donald Trump's theft of national defense information, you know, delaying hearings on Donald Trump's request to delay all hearings. You know, Donald Trump is playing like MAGA checkers while all of these great prosecutors are playing prosecutorial chess at the highest level. And so it actually would probably be a smarter move of Donald Trump to keep the trial date with Judge Eileen Cannon, knowing how she's helping him. It's already too late. He's already asked for the extension. So it's not like I'm giving him advice right now that he's going to be able to utilize. So don't worry about that, because he's already requested the extension. But if he was smarter about it, he would say, let's do the trial. The case that he has the best likelihood of being found not guilty is Judge Cannon. Not because he's not guilty, but because she helps him in every aspect of it. So if he was smart, he would have actually pushed for that case to go first, try to undermine what the prosecutors are doing on the other cases. But because he's terrified and a weak person of it, he's pushing that one back. But what can now happen is, whereas normally a state prosecutor and a state court judge would not only respect the comity of federal courts, but respect that federal courts take priority. Now Judge McAfee could be looking at what Judge Cannon is doing and saying, you know what, maybe we set this trial tentatively for May or June, you know, because it doesn't seem like Judge Cannon's case is going to go. So this has massive implications, not just on the testimony that's going to take place against Trump and the other RICO co-defendants, but on the schedule of things. And you see how that interplays with Judge Eileen Cannon's shenanigans and how, as I always say, yes, she's corrupt. She's also incompetent, and so is Trump. So that is a potent medicine for creating these confluence of factors that may allow this to line up as the January 6th related cases, the one in Washington, D.C., and then the RICO case go back to back. And that would be something that I think would actually be.
All right. If you like that kind of debate, that kind of clip, that kind of information and analysis, we don't blow smoke or sunshine, at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, there's one place to go. That's Legal AF, the leading podcast of its type. It's only on the Meidas Touch Network, right where you found us here. Come watch us Wednesday nights and Saturday nights at 8 p.m. If you're not familiar with us, that was your first taste. There's more to come. Wednesdays, we do 4 or 5 segments just like that one at the cutting edge. Saturday, once again, and on audio platforms wherever you get your podcast from. So tune in, Legal AF, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m., Meidas Touch Network. Saturday nights, 8 p.m., same place. And until my next hot take, till my next episode of Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.